The Topiary Cat, Chapter 11, Connections. It wasn't long after he had made his decision when his plan became unnecessary. After he and Tolly had their dinner that evening, there was a knock at the door, and there was Grandpa. "I've come to see Richard, Katie. He told me he discovered something about things I had been looking at through my telescope. Stars I hadn't seen before, and now they're getting brighter and brighter." Katie looked perplexed. She didn't read the newspapers or follow world events at all. She was so focused on her art projects. But now she was interested. Very interested indeed. She rushed to her makeshift studio in the back room, cluttered with frames and unfinished works. And she returned holding up a colourful painting. "Look at this! I had a sudden inspiration a couple of days ago and I just had to make an image of it." Astonished, Bubba and Richard stared at the painting. Against a rich cobalt blue background was an array of stars surrounding a large disk of bright yellow. She had captured the glow perfectly to indicate this was the sun, but what struck the pair was that two snakes were wrapped around it. The obvious markings on the heads indicated that these were cobras. In the foreground, in thick black paint, was Tolly, instantly recognizable, silhouetted against the fiery disk. The old man sat down with a thump onto the sofa. Richard stood there gawping. Neither knew what to say, and then began talking excitedly at the same time. Katie looked puzzled and mildly alarmed at their reaction. "What's going on, you two?" Bubba recounted what he knew about recent events, and then asked Richard to tell them what he had discovered too. After he had related his experiences with the dream and the scary adventure with Tolly, he produced the paper upon which he had written the inscription over the ancient door. "Any idea what this says, Bubba?" "Yes, I think I can guess. You told me that the bronze statue was Egyptian, and I know a bit about the history of that civilization. The words are all to do with the gods of ancient Egypt." He took Richard's paper and asked Katie for a pen. Very carefully he began to fill in the blanks. When he had finished, he sat back in the sofa and waited for a reaction, with a barely discernible smile of satisfaction. He didn't like to appear a show-off, but this time he felt justified, if only a little bit. This is what he had written. "Behold the eye of Ra. Bastet protect us." But what does it mean, Bubba? What is the eye of Ra, and what would Bastet be protecting? Well, some of this is going to be guesswork. I'm not all-knowing like these gods were thought to be by the Egyptians. I've spent quite a lot of time trying to find out about the previous owners of Nefertum Hall. One thing that's become very clear is their obsession with cats. In fact, I understand that over the centuries they owned dozens of them. I say owned, but as you well know, cats are never really owned. We are merely their slaves. Did Tolly prick up his ears at this? Richard was sure he had. In fact, the cat was sitting up so attentively he almost expected him to join in the conversation, though quite what sort of voice he would have, the boy couldn't imagine. Barbara continued. "I think the mound you discovered in Haythorne Wood was built to house cats after they'd passed away. Possibly the inscription is urging Bastet to protect the spirits of the animals inside. I believe you saw alcoves along the tunnel. I'm guessing that is where the bodies of the cats are. And knowing how revered they were, I think they would have been in some sort of casket, each one marked with the animal's name. The whole construction of the mound you described could be a representation of the sun. The Eye of Ra is, in myth, enclosed by snakes, specifically cobras. Bastet was the daughter of the sun god Ra. She was spirit guide for the dead in the afterlife. Now, Katie's painting is a clear reference to that as well, which is quite remarkable. All we have to do is find out why all this is happening now, and what it all means." They all sat back trying to absorb so much information. So many puzzling connections. It made their brains swim. All this was new to Katy, and she didn't know what to think about the pair's revelations. So she stood up and said loudly, "Right, you lot, bedtime. It's late, I'm tired, and I have to think. I expect you do too." And with a swish of her flame-red hair, she went straight upstairs, leaving Richard to say goodbye to Baba. They resolved to talk again soon, but Grandpa was still having to work all hours on the estate, getting ready for the forthcoming guests that weekend. It occurred to Richard that his old friend must now be very tired, if he had been spending time peering through his telescope as well. Don't miss the next chapter of The Topiary Cat, read by Richard Saunders.